Hi guys, I'm Blackie and welcome back to the channel. Okay, recently a really good friend of mine, Mr. Walker, sent me a present, and that present is a Glock military type field knife, the Glock knife. This is a model 81. There's two models, but many people call this the K-bar of Europe, because it was developed by Glock, actually before he did the Glock pistol as I understand, and it was picked up by Austria and then several other armed forces of Europe. Sorry for the wind guys, I hope I got the microphone blocked off properly so it's not going to glare at you. But I've never had one of these, and my good friend Mr. Walker gifted me this for my collection, so thank you very much. One, I like the design of the sheath. Let's talk about that. You do have a small attachment point right here where you can put a lanyard on it. So you can tie it to a leg, tie it to a piece of gear, something like that. That's very handy. Otherwise this slick would be kind of hard to anchor to. It has a very interesting belt loop that's just folded over and hooked back to itself, which I'm sure under severe conditions would probably allow it to break free of you rather than it breaking your bones, so to speak, which is a good idea. It's all one piece cast together. And the way that the knife is solidly held in there is by this hook that you got to tip up, which is also one piece. Very clever design. Now, let's look at the knife. And I'll be honest with you, when I first saw this knife, the thought that I had was the old Gerber military knife that we had in Vietnam. The Gerber Mark I, which was double-edged, and then the Gerber Mark II, which had a little bit of a sawtooth on it. It had an offset blade, and this blade is actually just a slight bit curved when you look at it straight away. So it's very much like that. Now that was a fighting knife design that we sold in the PX in Vietnam, and a lot of the GIs back in them days would get them and put them in the top of a boot or whatever. And it was kind of based on a Sykes-Fairbairn fighting knife. And for a close combat stick-'em type knife, it was a good knife. Now the tip on this is slightly different, but you see what I'm saying? I'm seeing the clues of that because I had an old Gerber Mark II. And carried it for a couple of years in my early days, back when we thought that the world was going to be destroyed by Russia and we were going to be at war and etc. back in the early 80s. And so I had a lot of that fun toy stuff. So when I picked this up, it had a similar feel. The flare of the grip fits the hand very well. It's got this plug in there, and as I understand, some of them, this plug would come out and that allowed it to attach to something, like a bayonet or something. Don't know. I'm not going to pry mine out. But it does have a lanyard hole back there that would allow me to put a cord through it. I don't see a direct line through it, but I'm sure there'd be some way I could drill through it or whatever if I wanted to put a lanyard on the back of it. It's got this bent guard right here, which I understand acts as a bottle opener, so you can flip bottles open, pretty handy, and a pretty good cross guard bottom, very reminiscent of the K-bar. Then on the back it has a nice serrated edge that cuts only one way. So when you go this way, there's no teeth. So the pull stroke, you're not dragging. The push stroke, so it's all a push cutter. You're not going to pull with this and cut, you got to push cut with it. Because you can see the way that the teeth are angled, and you can feel that when you run your finger over it, because this way there's, you know, there's not, but this way it would actually tear skin if you bared down. Now the edge of it. It's a thin little knife that comes to a sort of a buoy type clip point. It holds an edge well. I took my diamond stone set that I used and touched it up just a little bit. Not that it wasn't okay, but you know, I'm old and I have my ways. And so I touched it up. Now you can tell a lot about a piece of steel on how the stone bites it. And this, of course, is diamond impregnated. But I could tell it was a good piece of steel by that, it wasn't hogging off too much, which means it should hold an edge fairly well. And then plus on top of that, when I stropped it afterwards, it did clean up fairly easily. So I'm pretty sure they're onto the right idea. And these things have been around for quite a while over in Europe and have served well as a field knife, a combat knife. Now, is this a bushcraft knife? Not really. Could it serve? Of course. What is the survival knife? Whatever knife you happen to have on you right now, that's your survival knife. If you've got the skills, whatever you use is a survival knife. So what would be the strengths of this as a survival knife or slash bushcraft knife? Well, very good handle on it. The steel is of good quality. The saw teeth on the back wouldn't be really good for cutting down something, but it would be really good for notches, for making traps. I like that it's flared down up here so you can choke up on the knife to do your detail work right here. And for fine carving, you could do that pretty well. And you could also grip the blade and use the tip fairly well, laying it against your wrist like that for that fine tip work. So yeah, it could work with that. Besides that, it's a long straight edge, you know, which would be good for a long draw cut. So if you're working with green wood or whatever, yeah, you could probably start up here at the curve and do feather sticks with it. Okay. Now, could I strike a spark off of it? Don't know. Definitely with this coating on it, that's not going to last to do a spark. So I would say no without using the edge, and I prefer not to use the edge for that. But could it do a ferro rod? Yeah, I believe it would do a ferro rod okay because of these edges. I would want to touch up this part and probably use that for a ferro rod striker. Right now it's too rounded. And the tip is actually a little blunt on it, which is fine. It's very thick, but it's supportive. Now for a stabbing tool, you wouldn't notice it. But if you're wanting to do it as fine, you'd want to thin that tip out just a little bit because I can actually put my finger up there and rub it, you see. It's not truly blunt, but you get my point. They didn't want that tip to get too thin and therefore be easily bent or damaged. So they did leave it kind of reinforced because this is probably going to be used in the military aspect as a digging tool a lot as well to break up dirt. You know, anybody in infantry will tell you if you're not toting a shovel, you're toting something, you know, to make a hole. Whenever you got to dig a hole, you got to dig in, get a little bit lower, and that tip would be strong enough to go down in there. That would take care of roots. You could stab at the root and go through it pretty well and therefore do it. Now with the sheath fitting like it does, you could use it as a push away or possibly even a pull till you draw knife. As long as you held the handle right here, you could do it. You could bind down on it and use it as a draw knife, but you got limited access because of this. So you can't do it on a big piece of wood. But on a thin something you're trying to make feather sticks with, yeah, you could probably do it that way and utilize this to do it. All in all, a perfectly adequate military type field knife. Now, as I said, is it a great bushcraft knife? It would not be my first choice. Would it be a good fighting knife? Yes. It would be a great fighting knife for what it's designed for. How about a general purpose knife? For the average person, yeah, it'd be a decent knife. Good steel, good quality, got a good drain hole in it so it's not going to hold water. I bet you I could use that to help blow a coal for fire as well because of that drain hole in it. Little bitty things I would do when I put cord or something on here, could do that, jute. How about one of those micro fire kits on here? You know, we're putting Ranger band over the whole thing, of a little bit of jute, maybe a lighter, a couple other things. That would improve it a little bit. But all in all, it wouldn't be a bad thing to throw in the kit. So, having never had a Glock, because I had a Gerber, a Glock before, I like it. I'll add it to the collection. And it actually is a fully official Glock. It says so right there. It's not a cheap knockoff. This is the Glock. And it's got the logo and all right there. And that this is a model 81, I believe. I'm using the force because Blackie can't see that close up. 81. So there was a first model which I don't think had the saw teeth on the back, which is a 79, and the 81 has the saw teeth. Good for breaking bands on pallets when you get air supply and stuff like that. This was designed to be a military knife. And from all reports, it has served well. So for those of you that like to collect knives, and you've already got a K-bar and a pilot survival knife and one of these others, you might want to add one of these to your collection. I like it. Thank you very much for watching. If you like this kind of content, please hit that like and subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. And until next time, guys, I'm Blackie wishing you safe journeys. Have a great day, guys.